We are kicking off a brand new series today that's going to last for 3 weeks, and the series is called Postcards. And the idea of this series is we're going to be taking a look at 3 New Testament books that are so short, they're actually letters, but they're so short we're actually calling them postcards. And we're going to be looking at these 3 books that actually only have 1 chapter each in them. And so over the next 3 weeks, today we're going to be in 2 John, next week 3 John, and then we're going to wrap it up with the book of Jude. And so really excited about this series and looking at this. Anyone in here a postcard collector? Anybody collect postcards? Yeah, a lot of you. I mean, just tons of you. I heard a yeah, okay. Postcards, they're great. You know, especially when you get them at places you've been or vacationed or visited. It has a picture on one side, a small space for writing on the other side. Postcards are I feel like the kids' version of letters. I have a 2-year-old at home, and every time it's bedtime or nap time, we read books. And I love reading books with him, and you know why? It's because they're kids' books. There's a lot of pictures, and there's very few words. In fact, every once in a while, he picks out a book with a paragraph on the page, and I just look at the picture and I paraphrase because nobody's got time for that. And that's why I love postcards. We get a picture in the mail, turn it over and read something like, I wish you were here, done deal. Now, if you actually collect them from places you visited, they can be great reminders or memories of your experiences. If I had postcards of places that I've lived, here's what they would look like. The first one would look like this. This is a postcard from Evansville, Indiana. Evansville, Indiana. Born and raised, lived 18 years here. Did you know that Evansville is the 249th largest city in the United States? That's right, only 248 cities are bigger than Evansville. It's actually a lot. I didn't even know there were that many cities in the country. It's also home to the West Side Nut Club Fall Festival, which runs for a week and averages 100,000 people a day, which Paul Harvey once stated that only Mardi Gras in New Orleans is bigger. The second place I would have a postcard from, this is Siloam Springs, Arkansas. This is where I went to college. Siloam Springs has a population of 17,000 people, but has on record 52 churches. Wow, right? That's why I'm the way I am. I went to a small Christian college in a town of 17,000 with 52 churches, which Paul Harvey says is a record for most number of churches per capita. Just mind-blowing, right? The third place I live, this is actually the first place my wife and I live being married, and that is Columbus, Ohio. Home of the world-famous Ohio State Buckeyes. I know, yep. It's the largest city in Ohio, the second largest city in the Midwest next to Chicago, and the 32nd largest city in the United States. OH. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, it was crickets at 8 o'clock, but you guys get it. Big game tomorrow. Okay. The fourth place I've lived, and quickly approaching the longest place I've lived, St. Louis. Now, St. Louis, it's a special place. Such a special place. Home to the 11-time World Series champion, St. Louis Cardinals, right? Yeah. It's a little better, I guess, a little better. St. Louis has so much rich history, beautiful monuments and scenery. St. Louis consistently ranks pretty high in the category of largest cities with the most charitable giving, which Paul Harvey says, just kidding with the Paul Harvey stuff. St. Louis is no doubt a great place to be. And these 3 books that we're going to look at, they're short, and when I mean real short. And when it comes to the 5 shortest books in the entire Bible, these are 3 of them that we're going to look at. The average book in the Bible has 9,000 words, which is measured in its original language. So the average book in the Bible has 9,000 words. Does anyone know what the largest book? The largest book in the Bible has 33,000 words. Does anybody know what that is? That's a very good guess. Actually, the largest book in the Bible word-wise is Jeremiah. Jeremiah is the largest book word-wise, 33,000 words. And 2 John, where we're going to be today, just to kind of contrast that, has 245 words. That's why we're calling it a postcard. Next week, we're going to be looking at the shortest book of the Bible word-wise, and that is 3 John with only 219 words. And then the final week, we'll take a look at Jude, which is 461 words. Now, the other 2 shortest books of the top 5, Philemon, which got cut due to the snow a couple weeks ago, And then Obadiah in the Old Testament, I actually preached on Obadiah back in 2013, which was only 12 years ago. So that one's still pretty fresh. You guys remember that really well, so we just left that one off. So to better understand 2 John, let's recap what John wrote in 1 John. Because 1 John was definitely a letter. It wasn't a postcard, it was a letter. And in it, John talks about God being the light. And as his followers, we are to be light in a dark world. He also talks about God being love. And just as light dispels darkness, love dispels fear. So John ends his letter by saying this in 1 John chapter 5, verse 18. He says, "We know that anyone born of God does not continue to sin. The one who is born of God keeps them safe, and the evil one cannot harm them. We know that we are children of God, and that the whole world is under the control of the evil one. We know also that the Son of God has come and has given us understanding so that we may know him who is true. And we are in him who is true, by being in his Son, Jesus Christ. He is the true God and eternal life. Dear children, keep yourselves from idols." You see how John ends this letter? He emphasized something about God here. Jesus came so that we may know him who is true. And we are in him who is true. And he is the true God. And I find it fascinating that he ends with, "Keep yourselves from idols, which are false things." I have to say this is a challenging topic because it's such a hot button issue in today's culture. And that is the subject of truth. Why in the world is truth such a hot button issue today? Well, primarily because we live in a culture where truth has indeed become subjective, meaning something can be true for you and not true for me, or vice versa. We've blurred the line for truth with opinion and preference. And we live in a day where if we can figure out how to bend the truth or change the truth, it no longer is truth. But let's be honest about something. This is not a today thing. This has been a since the beginning of humanity thing. The phrase, "I know my own truth," is a phrase that makes arguing truth difficult. For example, as a Christ follower, I believe wholeheartedly that God is love, and I believe that that is the truth. While someone may have experiences in their life that they can bend that truth and through difficulties and hardships say, God can't be love because of the things I'm going through, therefore that cannot be truth. And while subjective truths can exist based on our individual experiences, our emotions and beliefs, objective truth will always supersede subjective truths. It's objective truth that defies time and culture and society and opinions. Now, the problem becomes when we attach so much of what we feel to truth. Our feelings and our emotions are who we are. They're not to be discounted. However, absolute truth is constant whenever our feelings and emotions ebb and flow. Now listen, I'm a huge proponent of emotional health. That is living in our true self the way that God has wired us to be. I think that is crucial to the way that we understand God and we relate to him, as well as how we understand others and relate to and love them. This is why we offer courses such as Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, like we did last year, and coming up in March, Emotionally Healthy Relationships, that I think are crucial. But our emotions and our feelings, they don't drive absolute truth, as much as we may want them to. They may drive subjective truth, but not absolute truth. Look, when my kids were in kindergarten, they were being taught basic things like 2 + 2 = 4. And if I have 2 apples and I put them here, and you have 2 apples, and we put them here, and we put our 2 apples and 2 apples together, we have 4 apples, right? Now, I could be taught that on paper, through a math book, on a chalkboard, but paired with seeing 2 apples with 2 apples, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, and based on my experience, I see that indeed 2 + 2 = 4. Now, truth is really our state of being in relationship with reality. It is the alignment between what we perceive, believe, and feel, and the actual facts. Now, it's because this equation has been broken for so many people that people have turned away from God. Not because God is not love, but because their life experiences have made it difficult for them to believe that truth. There's a disconnect between the timeless truth of the gospel that God is love and that he sent Jesus to die for you, and that he defeated death by rising 3 days later with the subjective reality of pain and disappointment and suffering in this present life. The reason many people fail to put their hope in Jesus is not because he isn't love, but because they don't believe it. So how can God be love when I've experienced so much pain in my life? How can God be love when I've experienced abuse and abandonment? How can God be love when I've experienced so much hate and discrimination? How can God be love when I have so little and I'm just trying to survive? How can God be love when I just can't seem to catch a break? How can God be love when the world is literally on fire as we speak? How can God be love when ... How can God be love when God's people aren't loving? See, the problem really isn't God being or not being love, but rather our truth equation is broken. When we say truth is more based on our subjective experiences rather than objective absolute truth, then we have a blurred truth. 2 + 2 = 4, that's the baseline, right? And no matter how you feel about it, whether or not you hate math, you get confused with addition and division and subtraction, get bad math grades, the truth remains 2 + 2 = 4. You could say I have 2 apples, I add 2 apples, but drop 1 apple or 1 apple gets stolen and there aren't 4 apples anymore. It's not that 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4, but rather a new truth has been introduced into the equation. 4 - 1 = 3. And it's the same in our own lives. When we experience pain in life, it's not that God is love is no longer true, but rather a new truth has been introduced, which could be the truth of sin damaging our relationship with God, or humans having free will, or that evil coexists, or that our planet is wounded. John, one of Jesus' disciples who also wrote the Gospel of John, he found it necessary to write this little postcard to the church, stressing the importance of truth and avoiding false teachers. He starts off with this in 2 John, verse 1. It says, the elder to the lady chosen by God and to her children. Now we believe the elder as John, it's the author, and the lady as being the church. He says, whom I love in truth, and not I only, but also all who know the truth, because of the truth which lives in us and will be with us forever. It's timeless. It does not change. It says, grace and mercy and peace from God the Father and from Jesus Christ, the Father's Son, will be with us in truth and love. Now, in the first 2 sentences, we see the word truth 4 times. But you see another word that is partnered with it, right? Love. To the lady chosen by God and to her children, whom I love in truth. Grace, mercy, and peace from God and Jesus will be with us in truth and love. John is emphasizing that truth is not separated from love, and love is not separated from truth. These are 2 things that go hand in hand, and why is that? Because God is truth and God is love. Now, I think far too often we separate these 2 things, and it's very unfortunate. For some reason we believe that we have to choose one or the other. I can either be honest and truthful, or I can be loving. I don't know if you've ever been asked for your opinion by someone, and you respond with, well, do you want the truth, or do you want encouragement? Because I can't give you both. Like, honey, how was my sermon today? She's like, do you want honesty, or do you want encouragement? Because I can show you love and tell you that you did a great job, or I can tell you the truth and tell you that it stunk, but I can't tell you both. And I'm like, I'll do loving lies for 200. How about that? Let's do that. You see, a lot of times, this is how we approach truth and love. And to be honest, this is how the world approaches it as well. I can tell you the truth, and it's going to feel like a donkey kick, or I can sugarcoat it and make everything easy to hear. And the church doesn't balance this well all the time either. Sometimes we will downplay sin to emphasize love. And other times we donkey kick people to emphasize truth. And it's really challenging to marry the 2. That's why some churches seem so accepting this to everyone, because love is more important, while other churches seem unaccepting and hypocritical because truth is more important. So where does Harvester land on which is more important, truth or love? Yes, right? Yes, they are most important. And in our values, we actually state that we are a church that's full of truth and full of grace, because both are necessary and crucial to understanding what it means to follow Jesus. But it's not just the church that struggles with the marrying of truth and love. The world as a whole has a really tough time as well. In general, we don't know how to be loving and truthful. If we're truthful, we're not loving. If we're loving, we're not always going to be truthful. And that's why we have a very difficult time knowing what is true and not true today. So in the name of love, we bend or shift the truth. Or in the name of truth, we tear down and belittle others. And John says the church is to be different. We are both, because we follow a God who is both loving and true. It's not one or the other. If we look at verse 4, 2 John, he goes on to say this: "It has given me great joy to find some of your children walking in the truth, just as the Father commanded us. And now, dear lady, I am not writing you a new command, but one we have had from the beginning. I ask that we love one another. And this is love, that we walk in obedience to his commands. As you have heard from the beginning, his command is that you walk in love." See, John lays it out pretty clearly. He says, walk in truth and love one another. In fact, this is love, that you walk in truth. And God's command to us is that you walk in love. And he goes on to say in verse 7, it says, "I say this because many deceivers who do not acknowledge Jesus Christ as coming in the flesh have gone out into the world. And any such person is the deceiver and the antichrist. Watch out that you do not lose what we have worked for, but that you may be rewarded fully. Anyone who runs ahead and does not continue in the teaching of Christ does not have God. Whoever continues in the teaching has both the Father and the Son. If anyone comes to you and does not bring this teaching, do not take them into your house or welcome them. Anyone who welcomes them shares in their wicked work. I have much to write to you, but I do not want to use paper and ink. Instead, I hope to visit you and talk with you face to face so that our joy may be complete. The children of your sister who is chosen by God send their greetings." Now, this is a pretty stark warning by John to the church. He says, watch out. There are deceivers and false teachers that aim to bend or shift the truth, and you are not to give them oxygen to the fire. Jesus is the Son of God. He came to earth in flesh as fully human, lived a sinless life, died on the cross for our sins, and rose from the grave to defeat death. And he's coming back again. Anything counter to that is a false message. And anyone that teaches that this is not true or that there are other ways to God or heaven is a false teacher. Now, John contrasts this in his gospel when he writes in John chapter 8, verse 42. He says, Jesus told them, "If God were your father, then you would love me, because I have come to you from God. I'm not here on my own, but he sent me. So why can't you understand what I'm saying?" He says, "It's because you can't even hear me. For you are the children of your father, the devil, and you love to do the evil things that he does. He was a murderer from the beginning. He has always hated the truth because there is no truth in him. When he lies, it is consistent with his character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. So when I tell you the truth, you just naturally don't believe me." And that's the contrast here, that Jesus is truth and the devil is lies. And that's full truth, full lies. There's nothing in between. And you can't make the gospel be something other than what it is. And you can't hate someone into it, nor can you make the truth into something that it is not. Being a good person, it doesn't get you to heaven. Doing good deeds, it doesn't get you to heaven. Believing something else doesn't get you to heaven. So why is truth so important? It's because you cannot fix real problems with false solutions. The truth is important, and the truth matters. So what do you need to do with the truth? Here's the first thing you need to do with the truth. Number one is you got to accept the truth. Accept the truth. The truth is the truth no matter how much you don't believe it or say it's not. You can say 2 + 2 = 3 your entire life, but it won't make it true. You can arrange your life around this belief and do everything based off of it, but that won't make it true. Studies have concluded that about 90% of American adults believe that Jesus was in fact a real person that walked the earth. 99% of historians believe this, and 100% of relevantly credentialed professors believe that he was actually a real person that existed. 70% view Jesus positively, connecting him to words like forgiveness and compassion, which means this: if most Americans believe he was an actual real person, then most Americans have to put Jesus in one of three categories that is referred to as C.S. Lewis's trilemma. That Jesus is either a liar, he's a lunatic, or he's Lord. If you believe he was real, you have to conclude he's one of these three things. After all, Jesus said this, also written by John in his gospel, in John 14:6. Jesus said this: I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Now, that's either someone that is the way and the truth of the life, someone that is a lunatic, or someone that is completely lying. And this one statement is a linchpin for everything. Because he did not say he was a way and a truth and a life. He said he was the way, the truth, and the life. And he said there's no other way to God than through him. And Jesus is the only way. And billions of people have bet their lives on that truth. Unfortunately, billions of people have bet their lives that this is not indeed true. And John is claiming that there is one truth. We accept the truth. Number two, we live the truth. We live the truth. Sure, you have to first accept the truth, but if you truly believe the truth, then that should be evidenced by you living the truth. So many churchgoers claim he is Lord, but don't live like he is Lord. John tells the church to actually walk in the truth. Look at verses 4-6 again. He says, it has given me great joy to find some of your children walking in the truth, just as the Father commanded us. And now, dear lady, I'm not writing you a new command, but one we have had from the beginning. Ask that we love one another, and this is love. Ready for this? That we walk in obedience to his commands. As you have heard from the beginning, his command is that you walk in love. Walking is such a great analogy to life. It's an illustration of living or action. Other people should be able to see the truth, to see Jesus by the way that you live your life. You're not betting your Sundays that Jesus is the truth. You're actually betting your entire life that Jesus is the truth, because following him demands it. And what does it look like to walk in truth? You're walking in obedience to his commandments. And John says this is what it is. In fact, he wrote about it again in his gospel in John chapter 13, verse 34. He says, a new command I give you. This is what Jesus says. Love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. And by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples. How? If you love one another. That's how they're going to know. You accept the truth, you live the truth. And the third thing is you share the truth. See, when you live the truth of the gospel, you're actually living a life of love. Is love characterized by your life? How you treat others, the words you say to others. Do you extend grace as grace has been extended to you? St. Francis of Assisi is famously quoted as saying, share the gospel and when necessary, use words. And I love that quote because of the emphasis on your life being lived should be the biggest testimony of faith in Jesus. The way you love others, the way you follow his commands, people should get a glimpse of who Jesus is by watching you. Your coworkers, your friends, your neighbors, your family, it is imperative that you live the truth. Share the gospel and when necessary, use words. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's necessary. It's necessary to also use words. That's why we share the truth. We share it. You share it with your words. And it's actually not hard. The truth is God is love. And God tells us who believe that truth that we are to love others. I mean, actually, it is very hard. It's really difficult to do. But the concept isn't. It's simple. In fact, it's you living the truth that will actually give you permission and authority to share the truth with others. That even when you experience pain and evil in life, that does not negate the truth that God is love. It just means there's another truth that evil and sin are real, but you cannot solve a real sin problem with a false solution. You cannot answer 2 + 2 with something other than 4, which means you, your friends, your family, your neighbors, your coworkers, your teammates, classmates, you cannot solve sin with something other than Jesus. You cannot solve jealousy with more possessions. You cannot solve hate with more hate. You cannot solve impatience with anger. You cannot solve depression with more money. You cannot solve loneliness with a boyfriend or girlfriend. You cannot solve failure with success. You cannot solve stress with Netflix or anxiety with pornography. You cannot solve disappointment with alcohol. Real problems require a real, true solution. And from the beginning, humanity's problem is sin. And the only true solution is Jesus. Now, if you want to solve this problem, you have to accept the truth, that is Jesus, and live the truth, and share the truth with others that need it. If you want to show how true the gospel is, live a life of love towards others. You see, when you're loving with your life, your truthful words will be more impactful. You can't change the truth to make people feel loved, but you also can't donkey kick people with the truth to make them believe the truth. Ultimately, love will be shown through the person of Jesus Christ and by the work of the Holy Spirit in your life. And I believe that love will reveal truth to others. I love what Paul says in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 15. Instead, we will speak the truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ, who is the head of his body, the church. 2 questions to ask when sharing Jesus. 1, is what I'm about to say or do truthful? Number 2, is what I'm about to say or do loving? And if you answer no to either, it may be good to rethink what you're about to say or do. Now, we're going to give you an opportunity today and over the next couple of weeks to write on a postcard. Everybody should have received a postcard as you walked in. I'm going to ask that you pull that postcard out. If you did not receive one, we will hand those out. There might be some in between your seats, but hopefully you got a postcard. And there also should be pens in between your seats if you didn't bring a pen. But we'd like you to take part in this exercise. Here's what I'd love for you to do over the next couple of minutes. Either number 1, write to someone that needs some words of truth. Or number 2, write to yourself if you need some words of truth. And if it's to someone else, what is it that person is going through that they would benefit from hearing the truth of the gospel? The truth that God is love, that God loves them so much that he would sacrifice himself on the cross to carry their sin and their shame. That Jesus would want to be in a relationship with them and be in that relationship with them for all of eternity. That there's nothing that they can do or not do to make him love them any more or any less. He just loves because that's who he is. Maybe it's a postcard you actually give to them, or maybe it's more symbolic and you keep it and you actually share the truth with them. Or maybe you need to write to yourself. What is a lie that you have been believing so much so that you have actually been living? Maybe you simply need to write down the truth on this postcard for yourself. Maybe it's Jesus writing to you. If he were writing you a postcard, what would it say? Because if you think it's things like, you're not enough, you're a failure, you don't matter, you're disqualified, you're a terrible person, you're a loser, no one loves you, you can't do anything right, you have to keep it all together, you can't mess up, you have to look a certain way or feel a certain way, or you have to be the perfect parent. Now, if those are the things that you're hearing and that you're living by, those are not things from Jesus. Those are things from the deceiver, the antichrist, the false teacher. And therefore, as John says in 2 John 10 and 11, do not receive him into your house or into your mind or give him any greeting, For whoever greets him takes part in his wicked ways. So do not take part in his wicked ways by receiving any of his lies. Reject them and instead receive the truth. Maybe you simply write the lies you've believed and then write over them with the truth of the gospel. Maybe this postcard is a flag in the sand for when you stopped believing the lies and started believing and accepting the truth, the real truth. So whatever you are writing and whomever you are writing to, go ahead and take these next few minutes between you and God.